Hello friends, let us discuss paper number 14, ASP.NET. We know that a web browser, which is a interface between computers and the user, basically it helps to gain access to all the contents that is on the internet and the hard disk of the computer. So you can view the text, documents, images, audio and video files, games, etc. More than one web browser can also be installed on the single computer. So the user can navigate through files, folders, and websites with the help of browser. When the browser is used for browsing web pages, the pages may contain certain links which can be opened in a new browser. Multiple tabs and windows of the same browser can also be opened. Let us see the definition of a web browser. A software application used to access information on the World Wide Web is called a web browser. When a user requests some information, the web browser fetches the data from the web server and then displays the web page on the user screen. We know that the web browser concept is derived in 1990 by Dr. Tim Berners-Lee. He was the scientist in CERN and the inventor of first www browser named Nexus. Later on, this Nexus is renamed and it was a text-based browser which was known as Linux, that is Linux, in 1992. In 1993, the Mosaic has developed. The Mosaic browser is developed by Mark Anderson, but again he transferred his Mosaic browser to the Netscape Navigator. So that is Netscape, and he is the inventor of Netscape also. Later on, in 1993, Microsoft has developed the first web browser, which is known as Internet Explorer. Today itself we are using the Internet Explorer, but in few days the Internet Explorer is going far away from us because it is going to stop its services. Again in 1994, the Netscape Navigator is replaced by Mosaic. Then in 1996, the Opera is developed. Later on, in 2003, the Safari web browser is developed by Apple's company, and that was called as Apple Signature browser. After 2003, in 2004, Mozilla Firefox web browser is developed, and then in 2008 the Google Chrome is developed, which was the popular today also and took over the total market of the internet browsing. Recently in 2015, the Microsoft has developed another browser which is known as Microsoft Edge. Nowadays New browser has been came into market that is known as full dive browser. This is the world's first social browser. So this is the particularly history of web browser. So this is the history of web browser, where World Wide Web, the web browser was created by Dr. Tim Berners-Lee in 1990. Later on in 1993, Mossack. Then in 1994, Mark Anderson, the leader of Mossack team, he has developed the particularly Netscape Navigator. Then 1995, Internet Explorer was launched by the Microsoft, and then Microsoft is again popular, but in 2002, Mozilla Firefox was introduced by the competent authorities. The Apple is launched a web browser in 2003, and it was named as Safari. In the 2008, Google released Chrome, and we know that today also we are using the Chrome browser in many of the computers, mobiles and laptops. Also, Microsoft has developed Microsoft Edge browser in 2015, and today Full Dive, which is the world's first social media browser, is developed. Nowadays people are using these web browser. What are the functions of web browser? The main function is to retrieve information from the World Wide Web and making it available for the users. Then visiting any website, which can be done using a web browser. When a URL is entered in a web browser, the web server takes us to the website. So to run Java applets and Flash content plugins are available on the web browser. It makes internet surfing easy, as once we reach a website, we can easily check the hyperlinks and get more and more useful data online. Browsers users internal cache, which gets stored, and the user can open the same web page time and again without losing extra data. The multiple web pages can be opened at the same time on a web browser. That is also a good function of web browser. The options like back, forward, reload, stop reload, home, etc., which are available on these web browsers, which will make very easy and convenient to use these web browsers. Let us see the web server. The another thing that is a web server, which is a very popular nowadays. The web server is a particularly a program which serves web pages to the web users, that is browsers. So a web server is a program that is using client server model and the World Wide Web Hypertext Transfer Protocol, that is HTTP, which serves the file that form web pages to web users. Every computer on the internet that contains a website must have a web server program. Two leading web servers are Apache and the most widely installed web server, that is Microsoft's Internet Information Server. A web server which is delivered the requested web pages to the users who enter the URL in a web browser. Every computer on the internet that contains a website must have a web server program. The computers in which a web server program runs is also usually called a web server. So the term web server is used to represent both the server program and the computer in which the server program runs. At the right hand side, the figure shows that how the web server works. Particularly a web server is particularly a software program which serves web pages to the web user. So from the right hand side, the web pages and graphic files are actually stored on the web server, and that will be served to the client which is seated on the table and he is using the computer, and he is requesting the data or web pages or particularly graphic files from the internet or from the web server. So web server actually a software program which serves the web pages to the web users, that is web browser. What are the characteristics of a web server? A web server computer is just like any other computer. The basic characteristics of web servers are, you can say, it is always connected to the internet so that client can access the web page and hosted by the web server. It is always has an application called web server which is running. So in short, a web server is a computer that is connected to the internet or even intranet and has software called web server. The web server program will always be running in the computer. When a user tries to access a website hosted on the web server, it is actually the web server program which delivers the web page that will be asked by the client or client's browser. So all websites on the internet are hosted in web server sitting in various parts of the world. So at the right hand side, the upper diagram which is given as functions of web server. So that is the internet, particularly in middle figure shows the internet, and the web browsers are requesting some information or files from the web servers, and web servers are responding to the web browser by giving or by providing the information, videos, text, images, or any of the information from the web server. So what are the examples of web servers? Here are some web servers which is shown at the right hand side. The figure shows the first web server, very important, that is a Microsoft IIS, Internet Information Service. That is Microsoft's popular web server. The second is Apache HTTP server, which is basically used for PHP programming most of the time. Then LightTPD, Light is one of the web server. The next is a Jigsaw, that is also one of the web server. And we know that we are learning the Java also, and the Sun Microsoft has developed, the Sun Microsystem has developed the web server. So that are all examples of web servers. What is the difference between web browser and web server? We have to know what is web browser and what is web server. Let us see the key differences in web browser and web server. The key is a purpose. What is the web browser says that it is a software which is used to browse and display pages available over the internet. Web server is a software which provides these documents when requested by the web browsers. The second, that is the process, a web browser sends request to the server for web-based document and services, maybe images, maybe text, etc. At the web server side, web server sees and approves those requests made by the web browser and sends this document in response to the web browser. Third is a process. Web browser sends an HTTP request and gets HTTP response. So web browser sends HTTP request and it gets a HTTP response. But at the web server side, web server receives HTTP request and sends a HTTP response. The next is a processing model. Web browser has no processing model, but web server follows three major processing models, that is process based, thread based or hybrid based. The data storage is also key factor, where the web browser stores users data in cookies in local machine, and at the web server side, this web server provides an area to store the website. The installation is also a key factor which differs web browser and web server. The web server is installed on user's machine, but web server can be installed anywhere, but it need not to be on a network or on local computer. What are the examples of web browser? That is Google Chrome, Mosaic, Firefox. These are the examples of web browsers. And web server is a Apache server as well as IIS. We know that we have just learned these differences. Thank you very much.